I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. Ahead of the Pope's trip to the UK, we'll talk to one of the leading Vatican watchers. He's author of Whispers in the Loggia, but tonight he talks with Lino Rulli about the church and what inspires him.
None of us can do this alone. We all need each other. We all kind of, we all want to support each other and just kind of cheer each other along.
Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us for a special edition of Currents. Now, in just 2 weeks, Pope Benedict will visit the United Kingdom. Countless journalists around the world will be tracking that trip, but none more closely than the man you're about to meet. He's Rocco Palmo, a contributor to this program, and he's also the creator of one of the most widely read Catholic blogs in the world. It's called Whispers in the Loggia. Over the last 5 years, Whispers in the Loggia has racked up over 15 million hits. We wanted to find out just exactly how Rocco does what he does and why it's captivated so many people. So he came up to Brooklyn from his home in Philadelphia to hoist a few with our own Lino Rulli.
Rock?
Centani. So good
Salute.
to see you.
This is a nice way to start an interview, huh?
10 o'clock on a Wednesday morning, I can't complain.
Whispers in the Loggia. We're not going to whisper through this whole thing. What's the deal? For those who don't even know what it is, what would Whispers in the Loggia be? What do you want it to be?
Well, most days I don't even know what it is, to be honest with you, Lance. It's whatever comes to my mind in the morning in terms of the news. I saw church communications kind of, either talking over people's heads or just not getting the whole story, or just kind of putting out like a PR spin, And so I saw that there was a way of doing it that could really just inspire respect and credibility. But I had none of that in mind when I sat down on the page and sat down at my computer one day and started doing a blog. It was just a way of getting all this stuff out of my head and, all this kind of what I thought was useless information. And then 5 months later, I found that, people were passing the address around, what the hell? And my first instinct was, I gotta kill this thing. I gotta get rid of it.
So the first thing you're writing, you're writing on a blog, and I don't want to sound like Ben Affleck and Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. What is the internet? But no. Why did you start a blog? Why would you start a blog doing things like, here's what's going on in the church? Why would you've got it in your head? Here's what's going on.
I had it in my head, and I had 3 friends who I talked to every day. Who were all religion journalists, and I would just, they would call me and ask me about things that they had heard, and I would call them and kind of compare notes with things I had heard. And then I just said, okay, well, this is going to save me a lot of time, so I don't have to talk to the 3 of you each day. And they're the only people I've ever given the address to. Everything that followed was word of mouth, and it's developed, it's grown, it's become something much bigger than me, partially because somebody's got to pay the bills, and God knows I can't do that on my own. So
you can't make money on it. You're writing a blog about the church. I mean, people who work for the church barely make any money.
Yeah.
How are you going to make money writing a blog about church stuff?
Well, basically, I'm like any parish. I pass the plate,
But you do it through the internet.
Well, do it through the internet, exactly, and which means, the fact that I get any response is good because, normally people feel guilt trip when you see them, and then when you don't see them, they're like, oh, I can hide, But the only reason it's been able to keep going this long, just over 5 years, 20 million hits, 13 million unique visitors, something like that.
All right, let me pick up on one of those numbers. All right, 5 years ago, how old were you?
I was 21.
Like every 21-year-old, you wanted to start a blog about Catholicism. And 13 million unique visitors have visited to see stuff about church.
Yeah.
And you had no intention of ever building that.
I never thought it would be. It was just what interested me. And growing up and kind of, seeing this amazing, what I call the wide world of church, kind of thing. This tapestry of people and everyone just kind of wanting to do better, wanting to be better, wanting to give more. Seeing all of that, the one thing that everyone's kind of pastime, if you will, being a baseball fan, I look at the box scores. Well, looking at the box scores, we kind of see who's up, who's down, what's going on, who's going here, who's going there, Over time, I found that actually had something profoundly theological to it. It's that none of us can do this alone. We all need each other. We all kind of, we all want to support each other and just kind of cheer each other along. And the way of doing that was kind of, what's going on, just kind of looking outside yourself. And But again, that was just for the small circle in which I grew up in the church in Philadelphia. I never thought it would have this kind of global appeal to it. I mean, that'd be crazy talk. You know, I started with 3 readers, and I thought that, okay, maybe in my wildest dreams it would have 6, and not 6,000 by 9 o'clock in the morning. You know, but that's the way the days shake out. So.
Definitely a lot more than 6 visitors these days to Whispers in the Loggia. Well, Rocco and Lino there, and the conversation is just getting started. We'll have more of their Whispers in the Tavern just ahead. Well, welcome back to the special edition of Currents. We continue our conversation with one of the most widely read Catholic bloggers in the world, Rocco Palmo. He's the creator of Whispers in the Loggia, and he's a contributor to Currents. Now, over the last 5 years, his blog has become required reading at just about every rectory, chancery, and seminary, not to mention countless living rooms and coffee houses. Earlier this year, Rocco talked with Lino Rulli about how a Catholic kid from Philadelphia got interested in the workings of the church and why he thinks that matters.
All right, let me ask you. You're 21 years old.
Well, not anymore.
Not anymore. So when you were 21 years old, can't get most 21-year-olds to go to church. What happened in those first 21 years that you knew so much about Catholicism, you were totally into Catholicism, that you're like, ooh, you know, I know the box scores, I know who's up and down, I know what's going on in the church.
It's kind of funny because, you know, when I was really young, I had no interest whatsoever in it. It was something that, you know, like felt forced. You know, I mean, as you do, you grow up, you're baptized. You know, well, I don't remember my baptism.
We'll give you a pass on not remembering that.
Thanks. I could use passes these days. I don't get them all that often. But anyway, when I was 8, the Archbishop of Philadelphia was actually a Brooklyn native. Anthony Bevilacqua was named a cardinal, and I was taken in by it because my interests, even to that point, were like kind of, you know, history and, you know, other kind of cultures, whatever, you know. I mean, there's not, because when you're in South Philly, you see Italian people and Irish people. You don't really see much else.
Why do you need to see much else? I don't understand what else.
Well, it's true. You got you got wine and St. Patty's Day. What more can you ask for?
Quite frankly, I don't even think you need the Irish. I think the Italians are plenty.
I like St. Patty's Day. It's the beginning of spring for me. But watching the media coverage of it and this kind of the explanation of these rituals, because you see these people in these strange outfits and in this language that, you know, you don't hear on the street every day. And the question that comes to your mind is, why do they do this? Where does this come from? And I think, well, I'm part of this, actually, by baptism, by being a part of the church. It really just took me in. So I asked those dumb questions. Why do we do this? And I just kind of began
Who
researching
did you ask?
it. Well, I asked the cardinal himself. I actually got to meet him. Well,
There
it's not like
lies the
bishops don't kind of travel in cages. You know, it's not like they're supposed to be approachable to the people. And so I kind of just started racking up all this knowledge, this history, because it was like another world. You know, it's kind of like discovering this culture that really exists in every one of our backyards. And this was the kind of stuff that, you know, among priests and people who worked in the church, I mean, they knew all this, but they would never talk about it, and whenever they could, it was like kind of opening up the floodgates, you know, and they would just kind of relate all of these stories and facts and things they knew and things they had heard or seen, whatever. That's what builds a community. It's not just, you know, the vertical, but it's also the horizontal, all of us kind of talking to each other and understanding and even just having fun. Not many religions can you just kind of sit back and talk about the faith with a glass in your hand, you know.
That's what we're talking about here. Now, all right, so here's the interesting thing, and I don't know how it happened, but it's sort of like now a lot of people in the church, if you will, check out this Whispers in the Loggia. And
I know, God help me.
They
please.
read about it, and if I hang out with people, I'll hang out with a bishop or a cardinal or so-and-so in the church, and they're like, ooh, you know Rocco? And they never picture you to look like this, no offense.
Well, no,
not that you're tough to look at, but
yeah, no. I always
either.
say, when people meet me and I'm, you know, kind of unshaven and everything, well, not just Italian looking, but just kind of not floating out of the sky in a cassock. Yeah, well, young too. But people always expect me to kind of come in like some like regalia or something like that, and I'm like, no, I'm a normal person, you know. And if anything, that
but
you're
not. Here's the deal: you're not a normal person. No offense, you're my friend. But let me say something to you. Now, here's my point. Well, what's the cardinal of Houston's name?
Dan DiNardo.
See, no, not everyone knows that. And
everybody in Houston knows that, even the Protestants.
Yes, of course. But what's the Archbishop of Indianapolis?
Dan Beekman.
See, no, I'm a Catholic.
Well, come on. We got to
What's the Archbishop of New Orleans?
Greg Amen.
See, but not everybody knows that, and this is what's interesting. You could ask a lot of Catholics, hey, what's your Archbishop's name? This is what's interesting about you, Rock, is that you know all this stuff, and what you think is normal or ordinary, you
Well,
go...
it's the church equivalent, though, of a political address. I don't know if you know what political address is, but kind of being whatever place you are, naming your congressman, your state representative, and everything. And most people can't. 95% of people, you can name everyone knows who the Pope is, but who's my pastor? Who's my bishop?
Right.
But the important thing about knowing all of that is, just as, in D.C. or state capitals, policy is set. In leadership of the church, that's where policy comes from. That's where teaching is interpreted. And so you kind of have to know, personnel is policy, as the old saying goes. You have to know who these people are to figure out and to kind of grasp what kind of policy is going to be set for the life of the church.
Rocco and Lino there, and a bottomless pitcher of beer. When we return, the talk turns to Italians, it turns to the media, and what Rocco calls the humanity of the church. Stay with us. Well, you can't have two guys like Rocco and Lino sit in a tavern and not get around to the subject of being Italian. That kicks off the next part of their conversation, which also delves into what it means to be a religion reporter in this day and age. Here is part 3 of Rocco Palmo and Lino Rulli and their Whispers in a Tavern.
My friends, the people I know, when they say, well, I read this Whispers, and you might know who's going to be the archbishop of this diocese or that diocese or this cardinal, when that's going to happen, or this bishop or that bishop, a week and a half before everybody else. As an Italian, we always know we're connected.
Yeah.
But how connected are you to know all of this stuff? Because who do you even know, and how do you talk, and especially at your age?
Please, you reach even more people a day than I do. But anyway,
thank God.
Over the years, you meet people, and everybody, like if it's 6 degrees of separation in the big world, in the church it's like 2.5. Everybody knows everybody, and you're just able to, and sometimes it's just like a blind email that comes in from somebody just saying, look into this. A lot of people in the church world may know things are going on, but, as a friend of mine said to me a couple weeks ago, and I was talking about something, that he had a way of knowing something, but didn't in advance. And I said, well, why didn't you say it? I'm not a journalist. I don't ask questions. You do. That's why we love you. And so it's, so that's my kind of job, to ask the dumb question. Yes?
Let me ask about that, Rocco, because this is the thing. Now I'm going to sound like this, in my day, I don't understand, but I'm 38. I understand the blogs. I understand the internet kind of stuff, But here's what I don't like about it, is that there's a lot of gossip. There's a lot of stuff. I look at my own name because I'm egocentric and bored. So I'll look at my own name, and people will say this about me, and they'll say that about me, and I'll go, hey, that's not true. That's just like some guy sitting at home drinking a bottle of Ripple in his underpants, and he gets to put out any commentary he wants about me or whoever.
Yeah.
But you're a journalist. That's the other thing that I think it's confusing, is that there's a lot of blogs. There's a lot of stuff out there. But that you're a religious journalist. You're a journalist who covers religion.
Well, that's the thing. It's not, my job is to tell the story, not to be the story and not to make up the story. Most religion writers, the ones who are left, at least in newspapers, have to deal with, Buddhists, Jews, Wiccans, you name it. And just for a local area. Basically, I always have a story. There's always something I can write about. I can write about anything going on in the Catholic Church anywhere in the world, and people will be interested. It's a dream job. If only it paid better, but it's a dream job.
The cool thing I would say about this is that the word Catholic meaning universal, is this kind of one of the goals, is to make the church more relatable, more understandable. No matter where you're sitting, that I almost care now. Ooh, that's interesting. They got a new cardinal in Austria. I don't know if that's true.
I love the fact.
Do they have a cardinal in Austria? See, this is what I mean.
They have.
See, now why would I know that?
In Vienna. He may be the next pope.
This is what Rocco knows that Lino doesn't know. Why would he be next pope? What's his name?
His name is Christoph Schomer. He's actually in the States this week. He's in D.C. today. So.
Oh, yes. We all knew that.
Now, I passed down seeing the Cardinal of Vienna to come be here with you.
I'm more fun.
Hey, I'd rather be in a bar anyways.
Anyway. Now, is that one of the goals as well? Is because
to make it more human. Part of the life of the church, which I've always loved, is that you can be completely human, completely yourself. That doesn't mean you go around breaking windows all the time or whatever, but it just means you drink, you dance, you curse, you smoke, you have fun. We do what we do. We revel in humanity. It's God's creation, and I think we've seen so much, especially this last decade, of the bad humanity of the church, the painful, and these things which lead to a lack of faith. But for that, it's a drop in the ocean compared to all of the good humanity in the church. And if this can kind of bring us all together and give us a sense of, you know, no one's alone. See, that's the whole thing about communion. What happens in China, what happens in Venezuela, what happens in Honduras or Vienna has an impact on me. And what I do has an impact on everybody else. This has all just come up in our readings again for Sunday Mass the last couple of weeks. And sometimes we lose sight of that because we each of us get so focused on our own thing, our own work, our own situation, bills, city. Oh, the parish is horrible, they're just asking for too much money. Whatever it is. And so to have that kind of wider sense of things, I think enables us not just in terms of place, but in terms of time. It's been around 2,000 years. It'll be around long after we're gone. So let's all just try and leave it a little bit better than we found it.
Well, stay tuned. There's much more Rocco, Lino, and Currents straight ahead. Welcome back. Well, we've already heard Lino Rulli talk with Currents contributor Rocco Palmo about the church, blogging, and the internet, and why all of that matters. And now they conclude their conversation with a wide-ranging discussion that covers everything from baseball to the priesthood.
All right, you know what everyone wants to know. Here's what everyone wants to know.
Yeah?
You're 26 years old. You're Italian, which means you look good in black. You got the...
I look better in black in the summertime, by the way. Now I just look like a ghost, but anyway.
You got the contacts. You know the people.
Yeah.
You're clearly Catholic. You know... Why aren't you a priest then? I mean, I know it's old-fashioned line of thinking, but that's the question. Why aren't you a priest then?
Well, again, first off, my girlfriend wouldn't like that. You know, I've really got the bent.
What? What happened? She clearly likes Italians with big noses. I'm just saying. I'm available. What happened? I'm too old?
What?
I'm just we're friends.
Sore subject,
It's
okay?
interchangeable, that's all I'm saying.
You find your vocation, and this is, I guess, you know, I see what I do as a vocation not just to the church, but also something that is fulfilling for me. For the first 10 years, I thought I was going to be a priest. That's in this part of the world, in the Northeast, you love the church, you have to be a priest. Well, if everybody who loved the church became a priest, we would be extinct after one generation because everyone would be celibate. So unless there was some funny business going on, you know, we would have no church left, and we would wipe ourselves out. And plus, you know, being Italian, I can be stubborn and bad with obedience. So, you know, let's not forget that.
Don't tell your girlfriend.
Yeah, well, hey.
Bad with obedience. I'm putting it out there. I'm putting it out there.
But anyway, you have to be who you are. You have to, you know, I mean, kind of. I believe in the saying, if it feels good, do it. I think that's something that I think that's something. And again, obviously, it's seen in a sense of.
I never hear that enough.
But I think it's God didn't make us to be miserable, to drag us into a call. He gave us the freedom to do good, and the best way we can do good, the best way we can be ourselves, is to do what makes us happy. So again, you know, yes, I'm not saying, you know, again, go out and kind of, you know, have orgies all the time or anything like that, or you know, drink yourself into oblivion. Don't, you know, be like Office Space. Don't show up for work, whatever. But you know, if it, where you feel fulfilled, where you feel happy, you know, each of us knows what the right thing is, what the good thing is. For each of us, there's many ways of doing that, as there are the number of us. It's like hitting the sweet spot on a baseball. You know, I'm longing for spring training, forgive me, but you know, when you hit that spot, there's no you get no resistance out of the bat, you know, and your hands don't kill you for 10 minutes. And it's just, and that's the thing for each of us. For me, it happened to be writing. For you, thank God, was radio, and one day being Dave Letterman's
TV.
assistant.
Well,
radio and TV. Well, okay, king of all media. Okay.
I'm not saying that. I'm just pointing out. I don't know if you know.
Let's not forget that at the Private Parts premiere, Howard pulled out a Pope mobile. So is that the moment you really felt for Howard?
On that, we'll leave it on that note there, Rocco. All right, man. Cheers. Cheers to Whispers in the Loggia.
Thank you.
And the church.
Which is all of us.
A great conversation there. Well, Rocco will be joining us later this month for our special coverage of the Pope's trip to the United Kingdom, and he's actually here tonight to offer a preview. Rocco, hey, thanks for being here.
Anytime, Matt. How are you?
Good, good. We're looking forward to, of course, this trip, and I wanted to just get kind of a little bit of a preview from you and maybe some insight as to what you're hearing about preparations for the trip. What's the latest?
Well, it's going to be a very intense trip, but also, above all, a very historic one for two reasons. First off, it's only the second papal visit ever to Britain. John Paul II visited in 1982. At this time, however, while John Paul's was a pastoral visit, just a religious visit. This is a state visit, welcome of the Holy Father as a head of state, as head of the Holy See. And so the first order of business will be meeting with the Queen in Scotland, and then one of the civil high points of the trip, aside from the masses, is a lecture to British society, an address to British society in Westminster Hall, the place where St. Thomas More was tried and eventually beheaded for not backing Henry VIII at the time of the Protestant Reformation.
Well, and of course, another big thing that's going to be taking place there, the beatification of Cardinal Newman as well. What can we look, I mean, because this is something that doesn't happen every day, I'll say it that way. What can we look for there? I mean, this is going to be a big thing.
Well, that's going to be the climax of the trip. It's going to be a mass for 55,000 people, so the current number was 85,000 originally in Birmingham, right by the Birmingham Oratory where Cardinal John Henry Newman, famous convert from Anglicanism, a great writer, great theologian of the 19th century, lived. It's unique, though, because since becoming Pope, Pope Benedict has not beatified anyone. The step before sainthood, he's entrusted it to cardinals and other high prelates to do in the place where the person lived. He would only reserve canonizations to himself, which is actually the ancient custom of the Church. But such is this Pope's affection for Cardinal Newman, his admiration for Newman, that he decided to do it himself. So, if it's not canonization, then having the Pope do it is the closest thing, I think. But that's going to be the high point. And then after that, the Pope speaks to the English bishops, and then he goes right back to Rome. It's going to be a really action-packed 4 days, Matt.
Wow. Well, of course, if I heard, as I'm sure you have, the numbers of Catholics now outnumber those Anglicans in the UK. So
attending Mass.
Yeah,
attending Mass.
Among those who attend, yes, on a regular basis there. Now, what does that say? How do you go about rebuilding, I guess, relations with the C of E? I mean, how are relations with the C of E right now in the Catholic Church?
Well, generally they've been very strong. I mean, but obviously since Pope John Paul II visited, two things which have rocked the relationship are the ordination of women priests by the Church of England. Soon the Church of England will be ordaining women bishops, I believe, in 2014. But also the Roman initiative known as Anglicanorum Cedibus to welcome groups of Anglicans who want to become Catholic into the Church. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, was seemed to be fairly upset by it. Many senior Anglicans saw it as poaching by the Vatican for Anglicans and kind of to bring them into the Roman fold. So that's just one of several areas that's going to take a lot of delicate navigation on the part of the Holy Father during the trip. Another one is British society. There's a historical lingering anti-Catholicism, even though there are 5 million Catholics, 10% of the population, and it stems from the days of the Reformation. And just this week, the flames were fanned, as it were, by an advisor to Archbishop Vincent Nichols of Westminster, London, the head of the English Church, who said that Britain had become a selfish, hedonistic wasteland and the geopolitical center of the culture of death. So, I don't think the Holy Father's rhetoric is going to be as heated, and if anything, the Church is actually getting a lot of blowback for those comments.
All right, Rocco, thanks so much for being here, and we look forward to more during our coverage September 16th through the 19th. Well, in the meantime, that is it for this special edition of Currents. For all of us here, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great night and a great Labor Day weekend.